Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, I am Dr. Razia and today we will discuss about the control of renal calcium, phosphate and magnesium and their ECF ion concentration, extracellular ion concentration of all the three electrolytes. So first of all we discuss about the calcium. So extracellular fluid calcium ion concentration normally remains controlled within a few percentage point two of its normal level, 2.4 milliequivalent per liter. When calcium ion concentration falls to low level, which is called as hypocalcemia, and the excitability of nerve and muscle cell increase markedly and can in extreme cases result in hypocalcemic tetany. This condition is characterized by spastic skeletal muscle contraction. And if there is increased calcium concentration, the term is known as hypercalcemia, which depresses the neuromuscular excitement and excitability and can lead to cardiac arrhythmias. So 50% of plasma calcium is in ionized form, which is the form that has biological activity at the cell membrane. The remainder is either bound to the plasma membrane, which is about 40%, or complexed in non-ionized form with the anions, such as the phosphate and the citrate. So calcium phosphate and the citrate, which is about 10%. And intake must be balanced with net loss, and 99% of the body calcium is stored in the bones. So bone therefore is the primary reservoir of calcium, and it can control by the parathyroid hormone, which is the most important regulator of the calcium release. So almost all the calcium in the body, yani 99%, is stored in the bone, with only 0.1% in the extracellular fluid and 1% in the intracellular fluid and cell organelles. So the bone therefore acts as a large reservoir for storing calcium as a source of calcium. When extracellular fluid calcium concentration tend to increase, the most important regulator of bone uptake and release of calcium is the parathyroid hormones. Parathyroid hormone regulate through three main effects. It stimulates the bone resorption, stimulates the activation of vitamin D, which increase intestinal reabsorption of the calcium, and dietary or directly increase renal tubule calcium reabsorptions. So there are compensatory responses to decrease the plasma ionized calcium concentration. You can see here in this flow chart. Therefore, over a long period of time, the intake of calcium must be balanced with the calcium excretion by the GIT and the kidney. The most important regulator of calcium reabsorption at both sides is the parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone regulate plasma calcium concentration through three main effects. Number one, it stimulates the bone reabsorptions. You can see here in this flow chart. And second, by stimulating activation of the vitamin D, which then increase intestinal reabsorption of the calcium. And number third, by directly increasing renal tubular calcium reabsorption. The control of the gastrointestinal calcium reabsorption and the calcium exchange in the bone is a very important, and control of calcium excretion. Now next is the control of calcium excretion by the kidney. So renal calcium excretion is both filtered and reabsorbed in the kidney but not secreted. Therefore, the rate of renal calcium excretion is calculated as the renal calcium excretion is equal to calcium filtered minus the calcium reabsorbed. Only about 60% of the plasma calcium is ionized, with 40% being bound to the plasma protein and 10% complexed with the anions such as the phosphate and the citrate. So about 60% of plasma calcium can be filtered at the glomerulus. Normally 99% of the filtered calcium is reabsorbed by the tubules, only 1% of filtered calcium being excreted. So the other anions like calcium excretion is adjusted to meet the body need with an increase in calcium intake. So there is also increased renal calcium excretion. Much of increase of the calcium intake is eliminated in the feces. So here we can discuss the proximal tubular calcium reabsorptions. In the proximal tubular, most of the calcium that can reabsorbed in the proximal tubule occur through the paracellular pathway. You can see here in this diagram, it is dissolved in water and carried with the reabsorbed fluid as it flows between the cell. Only 20% of proximal tubular calcium reabsorption occur through the transcellular pathway. In the two-step, calcium diffuse from the tubular lumen into the cell down an electrochemical gradient due to the much higher concentration of calcium in the tubular lumen compared with the epithelial cell. And second, the calcium exits the cell across the basolateral membrane by the calcium ATPase pump and the sodium calcium counter transport. In the loop of Henle, the calcium reabsorption is restricted to thick limb. Approximately 50% of calcium reabsorption in the thick limb occur through the paracellular route by passive diffusion due to slight positive charge of the tubular lumen relative to the intestinal fluids. The remaining 50% of calcium reabsorption in the thick limb occur through the transcellular pathway, a process that is stimulated by the parathyroid hormones. Almost entirely by active transport in the distal tubules. There are certain factors that regulate the tubular calcium reabsorption. One of the primary controller of the renal tubular calcium reabsorption is the parathyroid. Increased level of parathyroid stimulate the calcium reabsorption in the thick ascending limb, loop of Henle and distal tubules, which reduces the urinary excretion of calcium. Conversely, reduction of parathyroid promotes calcium excretion by decreasing reabsorption in the loop of Henle and the distal tubules. So the decreased calcium excretion, the factors are increased parathyroid hormone, number second, decreased extracellular fluid volume, number third, decreased blood pressure, number fourth, increased plasma phosphate, and number 6 is the metabolic acidosis and the vitamin D3. And the certain other factor you can see here in the table, increased calcium excretion or the decreased parathyroid hormone, increased ECF volume, increased blood pressure, decreased plasma phosphate and the metabolic alkalosis. So the calcium reabsorption is also stimulated by the metabolic alkalosis and inhibited by the metabolic acidosis. The acidosis tends to increase calcium excretion, whereas alkalosis tend to reduce calcium excretion. Most of the effect of hydrogen ion concentration on calcium excretion result from changes in the calcium reabsorption in the distal tubules. Next is the regulation of renal phosphate excretion. The proximal tubule normally reabsorbs 75 to 80% of the filter phosphate. Distal tubule reabsorbs 10% and 10% excreted through the urine. When plasma parathyroid hormone is increased, phosphate reabsorption is decreased and the renal excretion is increases. So the proximal tubule normally reabsorbs 75 to 80% of the filter phosphate. The distal tubule reabsorbs only 10% of the filter load and only very small amount are reabsorbed in the loop of Henle. So collecting tubules and collecting ducts. Approximately 10% of filter phosphate is excreted in the urine. In the proximal tubule, phosphate reabsorption occurs mainly through the transcellular pathway. Phosphate enters the cell from the lumen by sodium phosphate cotransporter and exits the cell across the basolateral membrane by the process that is not well understood but may involve a counter transport mechanism in which the phosphate is exchanged for an anion. Changes in the tubular phosphate reabsorption capacity can also occur in different conditions and influence phosphate excretion. For instance, a diet low in phosphate can over time increase the reabsorptive transport maximum for phosphate, thereby reducing the tendency for phosphate to spill over into the urine. Parathyroid hormone can play a significant role in regulating phosphate concentration through two effects. Number one, parathyroid promote bone reabsorption, therefore dumping large amount of phosphate ion into the extracellular fluid from the bone salt. And number two, parathyroid hormone decreases the transport maximum for phosphate by the renal tubule. So great proportion of the tubular phosphate is lost in urine. Whenever plasma parathyroid is increased, tubular phosphate reabsorption is decreased and more phosphate is excreted. These interrelation among phosphate, parathyroid and calcium are very important. So next is the regulation of renal magnesium. More than 50% of the body magnesium it is stored in the bones. Most of the rest reside within the cell with less than 1% located in the ECF. Although the total plasma magnesium concentration is about 1.8 milliequivalent per liter. More than one half of this is bound to the plasma protein. Therefore, the free ionized concentration of magnesium is only about 0.8 milliequivalent per liter. The normal daily intake of magnesium is about 250 to 300 milligram per day. But only about one half of this intake is absorbed by the GIT tract. To maintain magnesium balance, the kidney must excrete this absorbed magnesium. About one half the daily intake of magnesium or 125 to 150 milligram per day. The kidney normally excrete 10 to 15% of magnesium in the glomerular filtrate. Primary reabsorption site is the loop of Henle. Regulation of magnesium excretion is achieved mainly by changing tubular reabsorption. Increased ECF magnesium concentration following lead to increased magnesium concentration is due to increase ECF magnesium concentration. Number 2, ECF expansion, and number 3 is the increase ECF calcium concentration. The proximal tubule usually reabsorbs only about 25% of the filter magnesium. Whereas about 65% of the filter load of magnesium is reabsorbed, only a small amount, usually less than 5% of the filter magnesium is reabsorbed in the distal and collecting tubule. The mechanism that regulate the magnesium excretions are not well understood, but the following disturbances leads to increased magnesium excretion are the increased extracellular fluid magnesium concentration, volume expansion, and increased extracellular fluid calcium concentration. So next is the regulation of sodium. Sodium intake and excretions are matched under steady state condition. Sodium excretion is controlled by altering GFR or tubular sodium reabsorption rate. So excretion is equal to the the excretion of the sodium is equal to glomerular filtration minus tubular reabsorptions. So importance of pressure natriuresis and the pressure diuresis in maintaining the body sodium and the fluid balance. One of the most basic and powerful mechanism for maintenance of sodium and fluid balance, the fluid volume, it is the blood volume and the ECF volume, is the effect of blood pressure on sodium and water excretion, which is called the pressure natriuresis and the diuresis. You can see here in this diagram the effect of atrial pressure on the urinary sodium output. Note that the acute increase in blood pressure of 30 to 50 millimeter mercury cause a twofold or to threefold increase in urinary sodium output. This effect is independent of changes in activity of sympathetic nervous system or various hormones such as the angiotensin II. In this figure, you can see acute and chronic effect of the arterial pressure on the sodium output by the kidney. Pressure natriuresis. Note that the chronic increase in arterial pressure cause much greater increase in sodium output than those measured during acute increase in the arterial pressure. Regulation of the sodium is the pressure natriuresis and diuresis, the key component of feedback mechanism for regulating the body fluid volume and the arterial pressure. In this diagram, you can see the basic renal body fluid feedback mechanism for control of blood volume, ECF volume, and the arterial pressure. Solid lines are indicated positive effect and dashed line indicate the negative effects. This mechanism is the same mechanism which you can read it or discussed for arterial pressure control. The extracellular fluid volume, blood volume, cardiac output, and the arterial pressure and the urine output all are controlled at the same time as separate part of the basic feedback mechanism. During changes in sodium and the fluid intake, this feedback mechanism helps to maintain the fluid balance and to minimize changes in the blood volume, ECF volume, and the arterial pressure. Increase in the fluid intake, assuming that sodium accompanied the fluid intake above the level of urine output, causes a temporary accumulation fluid in the body. Number second, as long as fluid intake exceeds The urine output accumulate in the blood and interstitial spaces, causing parallel increases in blood volume and extracellular fluid volume. Increase in blood volume raises mainly circulatory filling pressure, as increase in mean circulatory filling pressure raises the pressure gradient for venous return, and increase in pressure gradient for venous return elevate the cardiac output. An increased cardiac output raises the arterial pressure, and increased arterial pressure increase urinary output by the way of pressure diuresis. The steepness of the normal pressure net uresis relation indicate that only a slight increase in blood pressure is required to raise the urinary excretion sevenfold. The increased fluid excretion balance the increased intake and further accumulation of fluid is prevented. The renal body fluid feedback mechanism operate to prevent continuous accumulation of salt and water in the body. So in our next slide we will discuss about our next lecture we will discuss about the blood volume and the ECF volume and their distribution between the interstitial spaces and the fluid intake. So daily fluid intake, effect of changes in daily fluid intake on the blood volume. The blood volume remain relatively constant in the normal range of the daily fluid. So I hope you will understand. Thank you.